Hey, welcome back to Hands Off Our Children. And I'm Jay, and I wanted to go ahead and welcome our guest, and I'm going to roll the red carpet for her. Rachel Kodanaz, I hope I pronounced that right, is an author, speaker, and coach that provides encouragement to those who are suffering loss or setback. She joined the grief world in 1992 when her husband suddenly passed away, leaving her with a 2-year-old daughter. Her experience in the management of large corporations led her to develop and publish resources about how to support grief and loss in the workplace. Rachel holds a BS in Business Administration from Bryant University. She is a columnist for Living with Loss magazine and has published numerous articles and handbooks on grief. And her book, Living with Loss One Day at a Time, has received international acclaim. Rachel speaks nationally to organizations and has appeared on Good Morning America. Her compassion and commitment is evident in the support she provides to national grief and loss programs, including Soaring Spirits International, National Association of Grieving Children, Employee Assistant Programs, and Human Resource Endeavors. Rachel is available for speaking appearances, educational programs, interviews, and community outreach. You can reach her more information at Rachel, KODANAZ.com. We want to welcome Rachel to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Happy Mother's Day to you. And I thank you for opening a lane for us in your busy schedule. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoy it.
Thank you. You know what? This is a very special show. You know, I definitely wanted you to be a part of it because we have so many hurting people right now. And and it's even more adding on until Mother's Day because people are passing away every day. And like, you know how it feels for somebody to just pass away all of a sudden and you wasn't ready for it. And when you're not ready for it, you really don't know how to deal with it. There's no handbook saying this is how you should deal with it. And what I mean by it's a lot of handbooks, but there's no personal handbook because nobody can really tell you how it feels unless you feel the pain. Am I right or wrong?
You're absolutely correct. And two people having the similar loss can't understand what each other's going through. There could be similarities,
That's
but
right.
you have to walk the walk yourself. It's your own journey.
Yes, ma'am. You definitely right about that. And, you know, like you said, your husband passed away in 1992. When he passed away, I want to ask you right off the bat, were you angry with God? Were you like, how did you do this? And why me and why my family when it's so many other fathers and husbands out there who's doing this to the wives, not really caring about the family, and you took my husband? Did you go through that?
I certainly did. So my husband passed away, just to give a brief thing. He had arrhythmia. He was a big athlete. He had arrhythmia, just walked out of work, and he just dropped. It was an electrical malfunction of his heart. But anyway, but absolutely correct. So I went through for so long, why me? Why this perfect family? Why not the villains? Why not? I looked for answers, and I got to the point where there really aren't any. It took a long time. It didn't happen overnight, but there really aren't answers. That some of it is just random. Mm-hmm. And yes, you lose faith in God, and yes, you lose faith in a lot of people around you of why this could have happened, yet it was not their fault. But you still want to look for answers, and you blame anyone and anyone because you just want that answer.
That's right. You're definitely right about that. But the thing, when you said, you know, how you felt about that situation, how long did it take you to get an understanding of it? Now, these questions I'm asking you are questions that people ask me. So I want to ask you because it was your husband, but it was my father that passed away, you know, just instantly like your husband did. So, you know, I'm just going to ask you what people ask me because like you said, we both have two different versions and two different feelings of how we dealt with the situations. How long, you know, did it take you to understand God's will?
I don't know if I ever really understood that. I'm going to be honest with you. There's parts of your day and there's parts of your life and there's parts of your month and your year and milestones and celebrations that you think, okay, this could have happened because it's God's will, or this could have happened because he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, or this could have happened because of other reasons. But I think you spin the story any way that you want to make you feel better.
Right.
So if the story's spun that it's God's will, then that's your story you have to stay with. If the story is that, you know, wrong place at the wrong time, then that's where you have to stay. Whatever works for you.
That's right.
Because you're the one that has to go to bed at night and get up in the morning.
Yes, ma'am. You know what? And you're definitely right about that. And I'm with you 100% when you said, I don't know if I'm totally cool with that yet. And that's where I am right now. You definitely right about that. Now, I want to ask you, how, if you don't mind, how did your husband pass away?
It was arrhythmia, just a bad, he missed a heartbeat, and that was it. I ran 8 miles with him at lunch. So it was very sudden, and it was very, obviously sudden, unexpected. But it took me a really long time. I was a sad widow, the poor widow, the daughter that didn't have her daddy.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I didn't realize, it took me a long time to realize this, he was the one at the end that lost. I had been one because I got to live this life,
Right.
and he didn't. But it took me a while. I mean, because you're in such an emotional turmoil, and there's no logic in emotion. So you just stay in this. Like somebody said to me, Rachel, you're a tornado spinning, and someday you'll put your feet back on the ground.
Wow. That's a good terminology. You know what? Were you damaging though? Like, you know, somebody can say you're a tornado. Does that mean, you know, that you were angry? Does that mean that, you know, you were shying away from people? You know, what was their terminology for that? And, you know, for our listeners that's listening.
It's all of the above, because you are angry,
That's
and
right.
then you, as a widow, you lost your dad. But as a widow, you don't want to be with couples. You don't want to hang out with families,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
you're a broken family now.
Yes, ma'am.
There's so many different. You know, you don't have your full religious beliefs right there. Some people go directly to that. Other people, I shied away from it for a little bit, so I didn't have that community. So I lost all my communities around me. And I just felt like I was just hanging out by myself. I know most of it was self-imposed.
Right.
Because people want to help, but they don't know how to help, so you push them away because they're not fixing it for you, and there's nothing to fix.
You know what? And you're right about that. You know, because what happened with me, Rachel, is that I shied away from my guy friends because they kept saying, two of them said to me, you ain't got over that yet? Oh, it was over. When they both said it, these are two different friends that said this to me. My guy friends, it was done. Do you know, to this day, I still don't speak to them. I still don't speak.
Believe it.
I still don't speak to them, and I won't. Because I felt like I helped both of these friends. I helped bury their family members. I helped bury them. I paid for stuff. I was there making sure that everything went right for each one of their family members. And then to say to me, you know, man, you ain't got over that yet. I felt that was so degrading. And it was dishonoring to my father, the same one that they would call him dad. When they see my father, they'll say, hey, what's up, dad? You know, they would talk to him about their relationships, family. He would give them good advice. But then to say, throw his memory in the garbage and move on. Oh, no, we can't be friends no more. That was it.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Now, I was going to ask, was your husband, was he in good shape? You said y'all had ran 8 miles?
Yeah, no, he was a tremendous athlete. He just had a low heart rate, and it was just there was no disease. It was just an electronic malfunction. I mean, you hear about it. You hear about athletes doing that, but
Right.
it's just, you know, his day was up.
Yes, ma'am. Now, tell me about the day that y'all had together before it happened. The day before that. Tell me something good about that situation.
What's interesting is that I wasn't one at the time that believed into like just things that happen and spiritually, and so much happened the night before that when I think about the days after he passed away, that were there signs the day before? I have to say yes, even though one would say, you know, Rachel, did you really believe that? Was a couple of them was that he came down the stairs and he had put our daughter to bed. And he said, well, before we go to bed, we have to put her in the crib. And I said, why isn't she in the crib? And he said, well, I wanted to lay on the floor with her, and I couldn't fit in the crib. Now, he's never done that before, that he laid on the ground and put her to bed.
Wow.
So was it him saying goodbye? I mean, who knows, right? We'll never know.
Right.
And there was just a couple of things like that happened. You know, he was healthy I thought he was healthy as a horse, but it was just, there were some emotional things that happened. There were some projects we were working around the house, and he was like, well, I got to get them done tonight. And I'm like, why tonight? And he's like, well, you never know what tomorrow is. And it's just, and those might have been just comments that anybody make, but to me, as I said earlier, you spin the story any way that it works for you.
That's right. You definitely right about that. And I see what you're saying. Now, you know what? It's what I want to do. I want to go to my team real quick. I want my team to ask you questions, and then I'm going to come back in, and then I'll finish giving you the interview. But I feel like, everybody has a different opinion. Everybody has different questions. But everybody around the world, we all don't think alike. So somebody
That's
might
true.
ask you a question. I say something that somebody that our listeners are listening to right now are like, you know what? Wow. That's the question I've always wanted the answer to. So I'm going to go to Foxy. Foxy, what would you like to say to Miss Rachel?
Hi, Miss Rachel. How are you? And happy Mother's Day to you, too. I believe I had a brother. He passed away with the same thing your husband passed away with, but he passed away by himself. He was alone at the time. And he had already, whatever they do, deteriorate because they've been dead for so long, like maybe 3 days. Yeah, and he was by himself. And when we had his funeral, he's Muslim, it didn't affect me as much, but I know that he's still with me. That's why I can't say that I'm grieving his loss or my loss for him, because I still feel him as my brother, and I still feel him around me. Do you feel that same way, that your husband is still around you, and you do things and he's right beside you, or, you can talk to him and still have that relationship?
Yes to all that what you said. I mean, obviously there's scientific ways that your body changes, but forget that. So stay with us, whether it's a religious thing or a spiritual thing or just a personal belief, is that I do believe that my husband, I am remarried, and I do believe that my husband is around me all the time. I believe that he helped me write the book that I wrote indirectly, because without the thoughts of him, I never would have been able to write the book that I wrote. I would never be able to sit and talk to you right now. The fun part about it is that we try to, when something goes wrong, like when there's I live in Denver, when there's a snowstorm and we can't get to where we want to get, and it was something around him or something, I always blame him for that. We tease, or my daughter has a problem, I say, oh, go find Daddy Rod. So we go find him and go sit down and talk to him for a little bit. I mean, so we do keep him alive in our lives all the time. We celebrate his birthday. We celebrate the anniversary of the loss. I celebrate my wedding anniversary.
Oh, okay. Miss Peaches.
I know some people might think that's weird, but to us, it's a day. It's a day in the calendar. We don't, like when our grandparents passed away, we still cook the food that they taught us how to cook, and still keep those traditions with us.
That's
so why,
right.
When somebody dies early, why do we not keep those traditions?
That's right. I do the same thing for my father. He's got a birthday coming up, and we used to always go out to eat steak. You know what I'm saying? So on that day, me and my children, we gonna go and we gonna have steak in honor of my father on his birthday.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am. You're right about that. Miss Peaches, chime in.
Hi, Rachel. You're doing a great job on the show today.
Thank you.
And I think that that's a really great thing to do, to keep honoring and taking those special days, that make you feel good. I don't think there's anything weird about that at all. And I just wanted to ask you, in your travels, have you met any people that don't cry if they're grieving, but they don't cry? Because it came up in our last hour with our first guest, that she was saying that crying is very normal, but some people don't cry. And what's a suggestion or advice that you might have for somebody in that situation?
Well, I'd first have to analyze it a little bit. Are they not crying because they're holding it back and they want to be stoic, or are they not crying because they're not criers? So I used to consider myself a crier, and then I think, anything, whether it was watching a movie, whatever I did, I was a crier. I mean, I just was such an emotional basket case. I was a crier. And then when my husband passed away, I think I cried for so long that I kind of like, okay, I'm so sick of crying. Then I could watch movies for a long time and never cry. So I think that the first thing you have to look at is whether or not they're a crier or they're not a crier. Okay, if they're how they show their emotions. If there's somebody that you think are holding it back, I think at some point it's got to let loose. We're just by nature, we're emotional people. And so if we are trying to fight a natural flow of emotions, at some point we need to release it. But crying may not be for everybody, but as a person, as I shared, that I'm a crier, I would think that you would have to eventually.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Miss Anand, what would you like to say to Miss Rachel?
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
I'd like to ask you a question. The day that you said that your husband passed away and you guys have been, running?
Right.
Yeah. You feel bad at some point, later on when you thought about it, that maybe if that one day you two hadn't been running, maybe he would still be with you?
That's a really good question for me for right now of what's happening in my life. I don't think that we were not physically running when he passed away. He went back to work, and when he left work, he actually passed away. So what's really interesting about your question is that my daughter is coming up on the age, she's 8 years off of the age that he was when he passed away, which makes me nervous because she is a runner. And although I've brought her to doctors and arrhythmia cannot necessarily be detected in advance, if you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't. But I've made that decision that I would never stop her from running. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question is that while you're asked it about my husband, I'm living it as she's alive.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Was that it?
Is that something?
Go ahead.
Is that something that's passed down to your daughter?
Right.
What your husband had?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too.
They don't, some people say it's hereditary, some say it's not. Like, you can go read anything on the internet or talk to doctors, but if there's no true detection of a heart disease, right, it's not one that you can plan for. And like, where I can't, she could go her rest of her life with nothing happening. So how can you stop her from living? I can't do that. There might be some parents that might do that. I can't do that. Okay. Because you don't know it wasn't the run that did it. Mm-hmm. He was walking out of work.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Miss Peaches, chime in.
Thank you, Cody, for coming back to me. Rachel, I wanted to ask you, does an irregular heartbeat have anything to do with what your husband passed away from?
I'm not the expert on it. I've been told not, but I would go get, I wouldn't take my word that I'm so far from medical.
Right. But just,
so
being...
Get that.
Go ahead, Miss Peaches, what'd you say?
Oh, I was letting her finish. I was curious because, a lot of times when you're dealing with different things, you meet a lot of people, you have a lot of conversations, and that was just my question. So I appreciate that, she's honest and said that she's not an expert in it.
No. Not at all.
Okay. And Rachel, in your book, and we're going to talk about your book, Living with the Loss One Day at a Time, is there anything in it religious and a religious message? And if it is, what is the religious message?
Well, I just want to take a second to tell you what the book is, the way it's designed. Okay. It's 365 different days. There's no beginning, there's no end, there's no January, there's no December. You could pick it up in the middle, you can put it at the end. You could just skip around anywhere you want to skip around, right? You can do, some of the days are really easy on you, go get a cup of tea, and other days I'm a little bit harder, and I'll answer your religious question. And it doesn't matter if you're a week out, a year out, 3 years out. It doesn't matter where in your loss you are. So when I call it Lessons and Thoughts of Grief, I try to do practical daily ideas. Some of them are, go to the movies today, play hooky. Some days are build a memorial around your loved one. But to answer your specific question about religion, I was trying to be very careful in my book about not pigeonholing anybody into their particular choice of religion, because I wanted to be careful about people that are wish-washing a little bit, and then also the people that have great faith, and then on top of that, because I work a lot in the workplace, of people that have different, even based on their nationalities, have different thoughts of how grief and loss should be. So I was a little bit careful in those arenas, and what I try to do in my days that I do talk about religion is I suggest to find your religion. Mm-hmm. And then another day I might say, well, if you are a little backing off your particular religion and you need a little bit of boost, here's some ideas to go get those boosts. Okay. And then other days I just talk about trinkets that have to do, whether it's rosary or whatever, that whatever your trinket is that helps you, that you need to have. So I don't go to one particular religion, but I do try to suggest to get to somewhere that you can grasp onto that has roots for you and that gives you your understanding of who you are in your group of people and or your community.
Okay, there it is. Way to break it down. I hear you. You definitely right. So you basically wrote it to where anybody and everybody, if they have an open mind, they can enjoy the book.
Well, and I did it on purpose that way, and the answer is yes, because I felt like all these years that I've been helping people, whether it's the workplace or whether it's widows, because I'm involved with Camp Widow, what I felt was that there was a common thread of a lot of what people were saying, as you shared about your friends, that they didn't get you, they didn't understand the process, and so to you they said hurtful things.
That's right.
To them, they didn't say hurtful things.
Right.
So I do try to break it down is that, tolerance is important.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to fix you. That's what they wanted to do, but there's no fixing.
That's right. You definitely right about that.
They try to fix you, and so every day I try to break it down so that whether you are somebody that has the loss or you're somebody that is working with someone or being patient with somebody that had a loss, or your within your family, that the reader could be anybody. Right. That's what I was really trying to, because death is universal. How we deal with it may not be universal, but death itself is universal.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're right about that. Now, I want to ask you, with your book, I already know what the motivation was, but did the book make you feel better?
Well, actually, the motivation of the book, if I'm going to read your mind, was that it was because it was honoring my husband, because that's who I really did.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
Also honoring my family, because my daughter, who is older now, and my new husband, that they've held my hand through this whole process as I continue to help other people. But what really triggered the book was paying it forward. I had a book in me. I had just all these years of being with people and listening to stories. Mm-hmm. But my book wasn't a memoir because we all have a story.
Right.
So your story of losing your dad and me losing my husband, we all have those stories. But what I wanted to do was to go out there and put something. I wanted to give advice, but not be in your face and not tell you what you should and shouldn't do.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to give you tidbits of information that you would go do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. How old were your children when your husband passed away?
I have one daughter, and still have one daughter, and she was 2. It was 5 days after her second birthday.
Oh, wow. So how did you explain, his passing as she got older, when she could understand?
Well, it's really hard to explain because they don't get it. And and I'm sure your listeners will agree, children are really self-absorbed into what's happening every second of their day, right. Not the emotional side of it. She felt it at sporting events and school events, right. And all those things where she felt that he wasn't there, but she couldn't articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
She would try to say that she was sad that Daddy wasn't there, but I think she heard that more from me and the people around her, more so than her be able to articulate really what was going on. What's interesting is now that she is older, when she started to get more into her 18, 19, 20, mm-hmm. When she got into there, she was much more verbal with it.
Oh,
even though I was remarried and she had, a dad in her life, she was much more verbal of what really happens when your family is, when something like this happens.
Yes, ma'am. Now, how much of him is she that you see every day 100%. And you go, oh my goodness, he's still here?
I am with her, and I say to people, was I even in the equation? She's 100% him, and I think that's, besides the fact that she's female, that I think that's my biggest gift of this loss, is that I still get to be with him. When I run with her, to see she runs just like the way he runs. She points her finger just the way, we talk about whether it's truly DNA or learned behavior, it's DNA.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And just like you lost your dad, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You're right there.
You know what? I'm right on him 100%. Even when my sister fly out here to see me, my sister cries when she sees me. She goes, "Oh my God, y'all look like twins. And it really tears her up. And you know what? I got his tattoo on my arm.
I was gonna say that.
And when people see my tattoo on my arm, do you know people have asked me, "Oh wow, man, you got a tattoo of yourself on your arm?" I'm like, "Come on, I'm not conceited. I wouldn't do that." You know what I'm saying? That's my father, and they are blown away when they see this picture.
I seen it and I was like, "Yeah, that must be his dad."
Right.
He's just like you.
Yeah, I mean,
That
we
tattoo.
like twins, and you know, my sister, it hurts her so much, and even with my brother, me and him, we have our ups and downs, but I noticed when we over the phone, he's got a lot more talk, you know what I'm saying, you know, talking stuff, but when we face to face, I think he feels like he's looking at my father. When he looks at me, he's not the same kind of person in person than over the phone, and that's really weird. Now, my mother and my father had their ups and downs. So I think when my mother sees me, she feels the pain that my father caused her at one time. And that makes me and her have difficult times, you know.
Which is sad. It's sad.
Right,
It's sad.
right. And it's sad that, you know, my mother to me, she hasn't been a Band-Aid to my heart with my father, because she's even asked me, you know, come on, would you know, y'all need to just let him rest. And that right there, it ended it with me and my mother. I'm going to be honest with you. That done it. I ain't talked to my mother, I know, for about a year and a half after that, because I felt that was so disrespectful, because whatever went on with y'all two, that was y'all. It didn't have nothing to do with, you know, me. That didn't have nothing to do with me. That's still my father. No matter what y'all went through, my father was an A1 father, never missed child support, always made sure every other weekend he got us with no problem, no excuses. I mean, came to our schools, got on our case about our grades, was at my basketball and football games. I mean, he was really on it. So for somebody to say something like that, that is really detrimental, and she got shut down too, just like my friends, and I'm serious.
But you have to do what you have to do to
That's
get
right.
through this, and you have to have your relationship with your dad, and you're entitled to find it any way you want.
Yes, ma'am. You're right about that. You know, because like I told her, at the end of the day, I would never let nobody kill your character. So how dare you do that to me about my father? You know.
Very
And-
well said.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
well said.
definitely.
Got a point.
Yeah. So I want to ask you real quick, Miss Rachel, where can we find your book, and what's your website so people can check you out?
So my book, it's Living with Loss, One Day at a Time. You could get it on any online, you know, whether it's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of the online stores. Many of the stores carry it. I'm not sure in what neighbor, you know, I can't keep track. I have a publisher that does that. It's also available on my website, which is rachelkodanaz.com, RachelKodanaz.com. That would be the best two places that I would suggest to get it. I do have a shout-out to the mothers, though, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Is that I just can't imagine being a mom that loses a child. So it is Mother's Day in a couple days from now. And I just want to shout out and just say, you know, embrace the memories, you know, the happy memories, not the death itself, but the happy memories. And my one idea is to do something on your child's bucket list that they didn't get to do.
That's
And if it's going down a slide, go down a slide. If it's coloring in a coloring book, go color in a coloring book. If it's going out to get ice cream, go get ice cream. If it's going to a movie, go to a movie. But whatever it is, do something on your kid's bucket list and be your kid for the day.
That's right. I hear you, Rachel. You're definitely right about that. And I want to tell you, you know, my heart goes out for your loss, and I definitely want to thank you for coming through today. But I don't want you to be no stranger to this show now.
I won't. And I'm out for your loss and all your listeners' loss. You know, I'm not
Thank you.
sure who told us life was going to be easy, but we all thought it would be, and we didn't quite have the tools to go forward.
That's right.
So we have to learn from each other. We have to listen to each other and learn from each other, because that's the only way we can learn.
That's right. You're definitely right about that. Well, I want to thank you for coming through. And if you have anything coming up with anything that you're working on, please get in touch with my producer, and I want to have you back through again, okay?
I would love that, and thank you to you and your listeners.
All right. Did you enjoy yourself today?
I did, because I connected with you big time. We
Yeah.
just met, and now we're all connected.
Yes,
and,
ma'am.
And that's the way life is about, right?
Yes, ma'am.
We connected through our loss, which is, who knows if we ever would have connected otherwise.
That's right. You're right about that. Well, thank you for caring for me, and you know I care for you. All right?
All right, thanks. Have a great
beautiful
day,
day. You
Happy
too.
Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, everybody, I definitely want to thank Rachel Kodanaz for coming on today. She's the author of Living with the Loss One Day at a Time.